Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told the UN General Assembly on Wednesday that Russia has failed to subjugate Ukraine on the battlefield and is looking for new ways to break his country, including battering its energy infrastructure ahead of winter.
This is how Putin is preparing for winter, hoping to torment millions of Ukrainians, ordinary families, women, children, ordinary towns, ordinary villages. Putin wants to leave them in the dark and cold this winter, forcing Ukraine to suffer and surrender.
Separately, diplomats on the sidelines of the UN meetings are calling for calm after a wave of Israeli attacks and airstrikes on southern Lebanon and Hezbollah rockets launched at Israel.
In the Middle East, we're intensely engaged with a number of partners to de-escalate tensions in Lebanon and to work to get a ceasefire agreement that would have so many benefits for all concerned.
The UN said nearly 100,000 Lebanese had been displaced this week as they fled intense Israeli airstrikes, mostly in Hezbollah-controlled South Lebanon. Health officials said at least 51 Lebanese were killed and hundreds wounded on Wednesday. Israel said it shot down a Hezbollah missile aimed at Tel Aviv. At France's request, the UN Security Council met in an emergency session late Wednesday.
We must not, we cannot have a war in Lebanon. There cannot be a war in Lebanon. This is why we urge Israel to cease this escalation in Lebanon and for Hezbollah to cease the missile launch to Israel. We urge all of those who provide them with the means to do so to stop doing so.
Meanwhile, in Sudan, a brutal war between rival generals has pushed 26 million people into hunger and famine and displaced at least 10 million people.
We are all aware of the statistics. But let's remember, these numbers represent individuals, people filled with hopes, dreams, and aspiration. Aspiration for a flourishing, united, democratic Sudan. These numbers are me, my family, and friends.
At a meeting about the situation, the UN said it is trying to meet a massive funding gap for aid, dispersing $25 million from its emergency fund. The European Union announced nearly $77 million, and the U.S. said it is giving an additional $424 million.
We must compel, in fact, insist and demand that the warring parties accept humanitarian pauses in El Fasher, Khartoum, and other highly vulnerable areas to allow aid to flow and civilians to flee.
On Thursday, the General Assembly will hear from General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan, one of the protagonists in the Sudanese war. Margaret Besheer, VOA News, the United Nations.